you will lead us in the third step prayer, Rob.
It would be my pleasure. Hi, everybody. Rob Cave, recovered alcoholic. The third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me, and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Excellent. Okay, we are in the chapter Two Wives. We're going to go ahead and we are going to finish it up today and kind of get started on the family afterward. But where we are is on the very top of page 118, but I think we'll go back one paragraph, Rob, to the bottom paragraph on 117.
Okay, so page 117, everybody. Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentments. Your husband will sometimes be unreasonable, and you will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your husband. Often, you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. We do not mean that you have to agree with your husband whenever there is an honest difference of opinion. Just be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit.
Yeah, this is that area where when things are good, this type of discussion is a relatively easy thing to have. And it is one that seems reasonable. It seems very doable. It is when emotions get involved and they start to run a little amok that it is very difficult, and just from experience to be able to kind of deal with this in a manner in which you try not to escalate, you try not to create resentments, or if there are resentments, you try not to exacerbate them. And bottom line is that it is just one of those areas where the more you talk about this when things are okay, when things are going good, the better off you're going to be. So that's kind of I would say the warning here is that the more you talk about it, the less chance you're going to have in a big problem. And with this starting from a speck of on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. You can weather that, pun intended, to get through it and be in a place where you can actually try to try and keep things on an even keel and not so much on an escalated problem area. Because the message here is that if there are big resentments that are created, it puts the alcoholic at risk of drinking again. And then things just kind of tumble out of control. And the next thing you know, you're right back at square one and it's a problem. So, Rob?
Yeah, remember on page 64, resentment is the number one problem. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. We're at the top of page 118, everybody. You and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. Next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention.
And yeah, this is again one of those better situations. It's hard to achieve this. I know that that's a difficult thing to do. It's why we're talking about it. But here's another thing that I like to bring up, and this is Rob's pause. It's a great place. What we're talking about here is to take a breath, count to 5, pause for a second, and if things are escalating and it is getting out of control, it's always a good idea. It always is a good idea if one or both agree to just lay it aside and come back to it when the emotions aren't quite so high. That's easier said than done. And in the moment, you want to jab, you want to attack, you want to draw a line and hold your own, et cetera, et cetera. But the point being is that that only escalates. It doesn't actually make the matter better. It makes it worse. And at the end, talking about it later is that at some point in time, you may decide that, well, that wasn't that big of a deal after all. We were able to step aside, take a breath, and all of a sudden now, and I know this is, it's rare, but it happens, but you might end up laughing about it. You might end up going, what were we talking about, and why was that such a big deal? That's kind of what the achieve, what you want to achieve is something of that at the end of this, this discussion is just kind of a mutual agreement, a good hug, and a promise to try to not do it again, kind of thing. Rob?
Yeah, and this is something that we can use in everyday life. When we have a disagreement with somebody, say, you know what, I'm getting a little upset right now. Can we take a break on this? Can we revisit this? Can I call you back later on? As I said, the greatest thing I ever learned, if you've never heard me say this, I'm sure you have every week, is to pause. We avoid retaliation or argument. Nobody wins. And once we learn that, it's a great thing. Is that so that we can step back from a situation, recenter, ask God, what should I do in this situation? The spiritual kit of tools that are laid at our feet. This is one of the greatest tools that we have been given. It's like the hammer. We can hit people over the head over and over again, but you know what? All it does is cause resentments on either side. So today we got tools that we can use. And let's pick the right tool to use in each situation. Your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. He wants to make good. Yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are habits of years. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. Show him these things in yourself, and they will be reflected back to you from him. Live and let live is the rule. If you both show a willingness to remedy your own defect, there will be little need to criticize each other.
Yeah, early on in my sobriety, I thought that just getting sober was the answer, like the end all. I wanted people to forgive. I wanted them to just forget, and I wanted things to just be utopian and move on. What I realized as I matured through my sobriety, and I incorporated more of the program, is that it is much bigger than just this being sober. That is obviously a required ingredient, but it isn't everything. And just like Rob just said, the program of AA is not just to deal with alcoholism. It's about life. It's about dealing with life. It's about how you approach it. It's about what you do when you talk with somebody, and what you think, and how you kind of maneuver through the trials and tribulations of life. And yes, patience, tolerance, understanding, and love. I can promise you that the people around me that were the most positive, I reciprocated with a positive attitude back to them. It's the ones that were still negative, the ones that were still holding on to resentments, and I created them. I get that. The idea is that it was difficult. At the very minimum, it was just difficult to kind of maneuver and talk back and forth, because you can feel that, and through doing that, it was one you had to dig deep and try to step aside from any or hard feelings or anything like that. But it's kind of that human nature. If somebody's being kind of ugly to you, they're being negative, or they're holding on to resentments, you have a tendency to want to either not deal with them, and or if you do deal with them, it's not necessarily where you're going to put a smile on your face and take the high road. That is the intended that path, but nonetheless, it's more difficult, as opposed to somebody that's happy, that is being positive with you, that's being supportive. you tend to hold on to that. You tend to want that, and in doing so, it brings a smile to your face. And when you smile, you obviously have a hard time saying something negative. Rob?
So true, Leo. I try to remind myself all day long: patience, tolerance, understanding, and love. That and thy will be done. Okay, I'm not in control anymore. I have to have the patience for other people because they're not moving as quickly as I want them to, tolerance of their ideas and their thoughts, understanding that they're not me, and they're not going to do what I want them to do, and love. When I get cut off in traffic, patience. Okay, it's going to take me a couple minutes longer to get to where I want to go. It's not the end of the world. We have to remember this, that, enjoy the moment as much as we can. We're only here for a short period of time, so let's enjoy it. So patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords that I use. Also, thy will be done. We women carry with us a picture of the ideal man, the sort of chap we would like our husbands to be. It is the most natural thing in the world, once his liquor problem is solved, to feel that he will now measure up to that cherished vision. The chances are he will not, for like yourself, he is just beginning his development. Be patient.
Yeah, we all have that ideal person in mind that we want another person to potentially be. I think it's very important that it is a acceptance, meaning that I care for you, I love you, and it's okay the way you are. Now, doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement, and that's good, but obviously we'll never get to that perfect person that we're looking for. We can get close, or we can get closer, but not necessarily get there. And I think it's an important thing to understand, and that is that you should accept as best you can this person that you have decided to spend time with, if not for the rest of your life, at least for a period of time. And the idea is that that acceptance goes both ways. I mean, that has to be on their end of it as well. And if you get to that point, there is something different about that kind of love and that type of relationship. It's a deeper type of relationship, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. Be patient. Things will improve. I can promise you, over the couple of years of my recovery and process, that I have done a lot of soul searching. I've done a lot of maturing, and even my emotional sobriety, as I kind of ultimately came to call what else I was working on besides my just alcoholic sobriety. And that is that I worked on that emotional sobriety. I worked on trying to be a lot more mature about how I handled things, and a lot more positive as well. It just takes some time, and the more patience you have, the easier that journey is going to be. Rob?
Yeah, time takes time. Be patient. Easy enough to say. Sometimes it's very difficult. That's why, patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. Keep them in mind. Another feeling we're very likely to entertain is one of resentment that love and loyalty could not cure our husbands of alcoholism. We do not like the thought that the contents of a book or the work of another alcoholic has accomplished in a few weeks that for which we have struggled for years. At such moments, we forget that alcoholism is an illness over which we could not possibly have had any power. Your husband will be the first to say it was your devotion and care which brought him to the point where he could have a spiritual experience. Without you, he would have gone to pieces long ago. When resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessing. After all, your family is reunited. Alcohol is no longer a problem, and you and your husband are working together toward an undreamed of future.
Yeah, and I can tell you that there were times when I probably would have drank more. I would have drank more often. I would have gone to pieces, as they say. But having my wife alongside me was a positive. There were times when I did stop drinking on behalf of some encouragement and or direction, if you want to call it that, from my wife. Sure, they came in the form of ultimatums at times, which were not necessarily helpful. They created some resentments and some ill feelings, but the bottom line is that it was this book. It was individuals that were that were alcoholics that were able to reach out and make a change in me that wasn't something that my wife was able to do over the period of years that she would encourage me to not drink or drink like normal people, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I don't believe that there was necessarily any resentment from her in that regard. It just didn't seem like it was. I think she was very thankful that I was able to stop drinking and that I was able to achieve sobriety and recovery. And so to her, no matter what the means were, I was able to do it. So it's not always going to be the case in this part, but you can see where you have struggled and you have tried so hard to get somebody to stop doing something. And then somebody else walks in and just says one thing, few things, just over a period of a short couple of 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And all of a sudden that problem is gone. And you're thinking, well, I've been trying to do this for years. It's human nature. There's obviously a resentment there. What Bill's trying to say here is just, hey, we understand that, but try to let go of that resentment and realize that no matter what, and that's for Gary's no matter what club, you achieve sobriety and recovery. Rob?
Yeah, one of my wife's biggest pet peeves with me is that somebody will say, Rob, I think you'd really like Brussels sprouts. And so I'll go to my wife and say, you know what, hon, do you think we could have Brussels sprouts? And she'll go, I've been trying to get you to eat Brussels sprouts for the last 20 years. But somebody else says it, and then it becomes okay. So I understand what they mean right here. Still, another difficulty is that you may become jealous of the attention he bestows on other people, especially alcoholics. You have been starving for his companionship, yet he spends long hours helping other men and their family. You feel he should now be yours. The fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. Sometimes he will be so interested that he becomes really neglectful. Your house is filled with strangers. You may not like some of them. You get stirred up about their troubles, but not at all about yours. It will do little good if you point that out and urge more attention for yourself. We find it a real mistake to dampen his enthusiasm for alcoholic work. You should join in his efforts as much as you possibly can. We suggest that you direct some of your thought to the wives of his new alcoholic friends. They need the counsel and love of a woman who has gone through what you have.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat one of the sentences. The fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. And that is so true. And the idea here is that you should be working with others. That is a great insurance policy for not drinking again. The more you work with other alcoholics, the less likely you are to pick up and take a drink. And that's important. That's really the important point here. The idea though is that the amount of time that you spend. So this is kind of it goes both ways. There is for the alcoholic kind of a alcoholic work with others life balance, meaning that it is important that you're working with others, but you have to take a pause every once in a while, look around and realize that there are people that you love, that care about you, that you care about, et cetera, that you need to spend some time with. However, what we're really doing here is to just say to the wife or to the spouse or to the partner, and that is that, be patient as best you can. Talk about the problems and or the feelings that you have when there's an opportunity to do so, and hopefully gain the attention of your alcoholic partner and try and balance that out. So it's really on both sides of the fence. It's got to be a good balancing act for the alcoholic. Certainly, it's important to work with others. But at the same time, the partner, the other side of the relationship should be very patient and understand that that's part of the recovery, that is one of the strongest ways that is going to prevent an alcoholic from drinking again, and that is the work with others. Rob?
Yeah, remember we read that nothing will so much ensure immunity from alcoholism as working with another alcoholic. It works when all other activities fail. But as Leo pointed out, balance is so important. You know, my wife didn't try to get me sober so that I would be out all the time working with other people. You know, she wants me at home, being a part of the family again. And, you know, we're going to get into the family afterwards once we finish this chapter. And it's going to take a look at a lot of these things that are now happening in our lives. You know, we're now a part of the family. How to integrate ourselves back into the family because we've isolated, or I know I isolated, pushing everybody away, you know, so that I could drink the way I wanted to drink and nobody would bother me. So now we got to reintegrate ourselves into the family. It is probably true that you and your husband have been living too much alone, for drinking many times isolates the wife of an alcoholic. Therefore, you probably need fresh interests and a great cause to live for as much as your husband. If you cooperate, rather than complain, you will find that his excess enthusiasm will tone down. Both of you will awaken to a new sense of responsibility for others. You, as well as your husband, ought to think of what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out. Inevitably, our lives will be fuller for doing so. You will lose the old life to find one much better.
Yeah, I'm taken back to a time when I was working with a nonprofit organization, and on Saturdays I would volunteer my time and working with the organization. I worked with the youth that were involved in participating in this activity. And it was something that I did to at a time I lived in a different place, so that was, you know, readily available for me to do so. But the point being is that it was a great feeling that I was able to spend, you know, 6 or so hours in a day on a Saturday and participate in something that was helping people of that were less fortunate. Now, having said that, I would tell you that in this case, what they're asking the person to do, the non-alcoholic person, is to get involved in some type of activity that it would be maybe a volunteer kind of work, and or spend a period of time going out and helping others. You would achieve some similar rewards from that, meaning that good feeling, that feeling of giving back, and feeling like you're participating in the lives of others and making a positive difference. That gets you feeling very good personally, and having that good feel good kind of place, that's gonna permeate through the relationship. So if both of you, the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, are out participating in things, maybe there's some common ground there where both of you get to do it at the same time, and it's this new activity that you get to do. Now, we're all kind of busy people. We all do a lot of things, and so maybe that's not possible. But the idea here is to try and find common ground, try to find new activities that will keep you busy in a different way than it was before. The isolation we're talking about also goes both ways. You know, and as Rob would tell you, that he would go to his basement and he would isolate himself and he would just drink. Well, what was his wife doing at the time? Well, she might have been upstairs doing something else, and there they are, just kind of sitting, staring at the walls while Rob was drinking, and she was wishing that, you know, she could have time with Rob or something else. The scenario is repeated over and over and over with regard to alcoholic families, and I've heard it more times than not that towards the end of somebody's drinking career, they were mainly drinking by themselves. They were withdrawn and away from the family, and there was part of the problem. So now that there's no alcohol, now that the recovery is happening, it is time to go out and find some things that you can do, maybe together, which would be even better. But nonetheless, going out and helping others, it's a great thing to do. It's very rewarding, and it's one that Bill is encouraging the spouse to do. But I would also say that I think you could find something that both of you could do. Rob?
Yeah, the best line in here is you, as well as your husband, ought to think of what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out. You know, if you remember on page 102, we talked about the Eskimo and the Greenland ice cap. And then it goes on to talk about, as long as we are spiritually fit, we can go anywhere. So we go with as long as we are spiritually fit and go with the right attitude. What can we bring to the situation? Not what we can take out of the situation. What can we bring to the situation? You know, remember, our main problem is that we've been selfish and self-centered for so long. Now we're changing our whole thought process around. What can I do for you today? What can I bring to your life? So be a giver, not a taker. Perhaps your husband will make a fair start on the new basis. But just as things are going beautifully, he dismays you by coming home drunk. If you are satisfied he really wants to get over drinking, you need not be alarmed. Though it is infinitely better that he have no relapse at all, as has been true with many of our men, it is by no means a bad thing in some cases. Your husband will see at once that he must redouble his spiritual activity if he expects to survive. You need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. He will know of it. Cheer him up and ask him how you can be still more helpful.
So idea here is everything's been going good. Everybody's starting to kind of relax a little bit. Then all of a sudden, boom, the person comes in, they've been drinking. What happened? That baffling feature, the malady kicked in, and they found themselves drinking once again. Hopefully it's not because there was a resentment that was caused because of an argument that was going on within the family, because that makes it really difficult to recover from easily. So idea here is you've got a husband or a wife or a partner or whatever that has been working towards sobriety. They've been doing a good job. They've been sober for a period of time, and then they relapse. We all know that it's going to happen. It just is a matter of how strong you are in your ability to kind of be resilient and weather that relapse. So in this case, they're saying that and he does do this, has been true with many of our men and or women. It is by no means a bad thing in some cases. Sometimes people relapse and they are off to the races, and it is a bad thing. All the problems get are there again, and again you start back at square one. But in some cases, and in a lot of cases, they just relapsed, and then they realized that they made a big mistake and they learned from it. And I can tell you that when I relapsed, the last time especially that I relapsed, I learned a valuable lesson in that. So it actually, when I doubled down on my sobriety, I was in a better place because I had learned something from the drinking that I did during my relapse, and it was a good thing. So in that case, it is important for the partner, the other person, to realize that and actually be positive, be supportive, and help that alcoholic move back into a sober and a recovery frame of mind. And that's really what the message is here. And that to just analyze what's going on, try your best to be positive, try your best to be supportive, and hopefully it is a learning experience for the alcoholic. And in that, they understand better what their sobriety should be and will be, and they're better for it. It really is sometimes a good thing. And I say that, qualified. It's a qualified good thing for somebody to relapse, because in my case, my last relapse, I learned a valuable lesson, and it helped me to not ever drink again. Rob?
Yeah, I have a note here saying relapse may be the wake-up call they need. There's nothing worse than a head full of AA and a belly full of beer. It's The big lie is that, and we have this, I find this in the fellowship quite often, is that people get a couple of months, 3 months, and they start, things start to look better in their lives. They have a couple of dollars in their pocket. People are around them are trusting them more. They're showing up for work, etc. And the big lie is that, am I really an alcoholic? I haven't had a drink for a couple of months now. Maybe I'm making too big of a deal about it. Well, sometimes right here, when they get drunk, they realize that, they have to keep doing the thing. They can't rest on the laurels, as they say, as we read earlier in the book, that we have to redouble our efforts. We have to keep doing the things that keep us sober, because the life being sober, as most of us know in this room, is so much better than the life we had. Slightest sign of fear or intolerance may lessen your husband's chance of recovery. In a weak moment, he may take your dislike of his high-stepping friend as one of those insanely trivial excuses to drink.
So this is early recovery is fragile. You're teetering back and forth. You're struggling at times. The voice in your head is telling you that you can drink like others. Certainly you should be able to do that. You've got 2 weeks of sobriety under your belt, and all of a sudden you think, oh, I've got it licked, and you do that. So the idea here is that one of those insanely trivial excuses to drink, we're teetering. And then I would take this as kind of that early sobriety, because somebody that's, I'll take my own situation, for example. I don't have high-stepping friends, if you will, anymore. I have become very good at and strong in my recovery. So a small little thing, a resentment or whatever, doesn't push me back to drink. I'm at risk. I believe that 100%. But in this case, I'm less of a risk because of my investment into my recovery. But in this case, let's call it an early stage. First 2 to 3 months, things are teetering. You still have the back and forth. They're working on their resentments. They're working on their recovery. They're working on their sobriety. Some of their friends are still probably applying, even if it's, not direct, but indirect pressure to drink, et cetera, et cetera. One resentment could push this person back to drink. The idea here is that you should still just kind of be patient, tolerant to the best of your ability, and supportive. And that's really, again, what the message is here. Now let's talk about a sponsor. A sponsor should know that early recovery is fragile, and that there are ways that you can kind of lay a better foundation or continue to add to that foundation, so that the fragility of the recovery becomes less and less, and it becomes stronger and stronger, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something that you've got to be watching out for here, is that if you notice that there's a resentment starting to well up in the alcoholic that's working on their sobriety and their early recovery, it's a great time to intercede and work on that resentment, and kind of say, look, let's talk through this, and let's work through this. Do you really think that that's a good reason to go back and drink? Well, no, it's not. Of course it's not. And you kind of reinforce that, and hopefully you can stay the relapse and be in a good place. Rob?
Yeah, I just love the high-stepping friends. To me, that I just love the terminology that they use here. Now, Grant, 1938 that he wrote it, 1939 it was public, and just some of the, you don't hear that term too often now. So get a kick out of it. We never try to arrange a man's life so as to shield him from temptation. The slightest disposition on your part to guide his appointments or his affairs so he will not be tempted will be noticed. Make him feel absolutely free to come and go as he likes. This is important. If he gets drunk, don't blame yourself. God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. If not, it had better to be found out right away. Then you and your husband can get right down to fundamentals If a repetition is to be prevented, place the problem along with everything else in God's hands.
So this is a great reinforcement of having your higher power right there with you at all times, because there are at all times the risk of drinking again. And it isn't the other person's fault. Yeah, maybe there was an argument, maybe there was some disagreement, and the person that's drinking or that is recovering decides that they're going to use that as an excuse to drink. That is not the other person's fault. And that is an important distinction here that we should reinforce. The other part of this is that it is or it isn't, and they have their higher power, and they are really working with their higher power, or they're not. And it's a distinction that is one that we want to make. And getting back to the fundamentals, getting back to square one, square two, square three, et cetera, et cetera. Again, once you've got that level of sobriety, that early recovery, it's just continue to add to the foundation and continue to build some barriers for yourself, using your higher power to really kind of get in there and reinforce that. Now, one of the other messages here is to not try to control the alcoholic's life by steering them away from, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to feel a little bit corralled. They're going to feel kind of controlled. Nobody likes that feeling of having somebody else try and control their lives. Just kind of imagine it for yourself. Point being is that, let them come and go as they may. It is important for them to find out and realize that they have something good to hold on to, even in the midst of other people that might be drinking. And if you try and control that, if you try to steer them away from certain things, then you're going to find that they're going to build some resentments, and that is in of itself a deal breaker at times. And remember that fragility of recovery is important to remember, and that can be undone in a moment's notice. Rob?
Yeah, let's go to page 101 for a second. And on page 101, it says, in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. Now, the idea is that they are spiritually fit. They have a connection to their higher power. Okay? Trying to shield people from alcohol is almost impossible. Everywhere you go, there is liquor being served. You can go in the US, it's in the grocery stores. It is everywhere you go. If you want to find it, you can find it. So that's why we have to be in fit spiritual shape. And if we are not in fit spiritual shape, then we have to worry about these things. So if we try to shield somebody from alcohol, it's like spitting into the wind. It's going to come back right at you. So remember, the whole idea about going through the steps is to get a spiritual experience, to get that connection. But in step 11, we keep that spiritual connection alive by constant communication with our higher power, and living in step 12, which is helping other people. We're on page 121 at the top, everybody. We realize that we have been giving you much direction and advice. We may have seemed to lecture. If that is so, we are sorry, for we ourselves don't always care for people who lecture us. But what we have related is based upon experience, some of it painful. We have to learn these things the hard way. That is why we are anxious that you understand and that you avoid these unnecessary difficulties. So to you out there who may soon be with us, we say good luck and God bless you. Leo, do you want me to read the bottom now?
We'll read it in
wait.
just a second.
Okay.
Just a second. One of the things I want to say here is that these are lessons learned. They're sharing them with us so that we can potentially avoid those pitfalls and avoid the problems. So basically, it's a disclaimer at the end of all of this to say, hey, I know it sounded like we were lecturing at times. We apologize for that. However, these lessons have been something that we've experienced more times than we care to admit, but they're there. And if you heed our advice, our suggestions, the chances are the path of recovery is going to be a lot smoother. And that's really what that message is right now. So what Rob is about to read is about Al-Anon and Alateen. It's a couple of things that are not necessarily directly, they are related to AA, but they're not a part of AA. So that's also a distinction here as well. Rob?
Yeah, just before I hit that, Leo, I just want to say a couple things. You know, the whole idea is that we learn things the hard way. Okay, we, you know, instead of opening a door, we'll bang our head, you know, and try to get through it. The thing is that the first 100 people are trying to show what they did so that we can avoid the pitfalls that they went through. And that's what we do when we go to share our experience, strength, and hope. You know, we're trying to show our sponsees or trying to help them, you know, get around some of the problems that we've had, you know, and that's how we use our experience, strength, and hope, you know, for the good, so that other people don't have to go through what you had to go through. You know, I hear so often of people that were in and out of the rooms 11 years, 15 years before they got the message, before they got this. They learned what the program was. You know, they thought going to meetings was the program. By just showing up to the meeting, you know, they were doing the program. But it's not. It's going through the steps to have a spiritual experience sufficient enough to have us recover. And, you know, it's up to us to carry that message. So enough of me spouting off. The Fellowship of Al-Anon family group was formed about 13 years after this chapter was written. Though it is entirely separate from Alcoholics Anonymous, it uses the general principles of the AA program as a guide for husbands, wives, relatives, friends, and others close to alcoholics. The foregoing pages, though addressed only to wives, indicate the problems such may face. Alateen for teenage children of alcoholics is a part of Al-Anon. If there is no Al-Anon listing in your telephone book, you may obtain further information on Al-Anon, Alateen Family Group, by writing to its World Service Office at 1600 Corporate Landing Parkway, Virginia Beach, and website www.al-anon.org.
Yep. So it's one of the only times we talk about Al-Anon or Alateen, which I've had a relative of mine that was very involved in Al-Anon as I had another relative that was a clear alcoholic and not a very nice one. And so she would sit down and talk to me at times because of my father's alcoholism and some of the things that she learned in Al-Anon, she would try to express and talk to me about, and even got me encouraged to read a book about being a enabler, if you will, for alcoholics. And so what I'm trying to say here is that there is support that is formalized through Al-Anon and Alateen out there for individuals that are related to, in some manner or fashion, to another alcoholic. Those that participate in Al-Anon and Alateen always have something good to say about it. I haven't heard yet anybody that had anything negative to say about it. Now, how many people are out there that are involved in it? It's a fraction of what I think would benefit from it, but it is out there, and it is just a plug to say that there is that support that's there. Now, more likely than not, the individual that is with an alcoholic is probably going to trudge the road alone. Hopefully they have tapped into a higher power. Hopefully they have read part of this book, if not all of the book. Hopefully they understand alcoholism, at least in a manner in which they can be, positive and supportive of the recovering alcoholic. But by and large, there is an outlet there that is available, and it's just one that I think is very good. And the more people that get involved, I think the better off everybody's going to be. A lot of good lessons learned, a lot of good, how to deal with the alcoholic person that you're a part of, and good things are there. But getting into this book, I can tell you, is by far probably an easier thing to do. And it's one that I think that everybody should know and do. And the sponsor should be encouraging the alcoholic that they're working with to express to those relatives and friends that are around them that there is answers. There is a program. It is one that is great to understand. And all they have to do is read the first portion of this book and kind of internalize it, and they'll be better off for it. Rob.
Beautifully put, Leo.
Okay. All right. We've got a few minutes left. We're going to go ahead and get started with the family afterward. It's chapter 9. It's page 122. We'll probably get a page or two into it, and we'll just take it from there. All right, Rob?
Sounds great. The family afterward. Our women folk have suggested certain attitudes a wife may take with the husband who is recovering. Perhaps they created the impression that he is to be wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means the opposite. All members of the family should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. This involves a process of deflation. The alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitude toward himself or herself. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. We find the more one member of the family demands that the others concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness.
Yeah, so here we're going to repeat a couple of concepts here. One of which is going to be, that the tolerance, understanding, and love. What we're trying to do here in this chapter is very much like we did for the Two Wives chapter, and that is to reach out to those individuals that are a part of the alcoholic's life and say, okay, here are some things that are going to happen. Here are some expectations on how you might endure and or react to those things, and here are some attitudes and beliefs that you should try and imbue upon yourself and express to the alcoholic. Because again, just like we said before, if you're an alcoholic and you have a loving, supportive, and positive partner, the road is going to be much smoother. There is just no way that it's going to be harder if you've got somebody that's positive and supportive. So the extension of that to the kids, to in-laws, to friends, etc., is also good. If you've got positive, supportive people in your life, then the road will be smoother. I can say definitively that I've got some in-laws that I just went and visited, and they have been nothing but supportive and positive towards my recovery. And I've been in a unique position in that my father-in-law is a retired sociologist and dean of a college that wrote a book on alcoholism back in the 1970s. So he has been around alcoholics and recovery and that type of thing for 50 years. And so it is one of those times where I can have kind of these elevated discussions about alcoholism with him in a way that I wouldn't have normally had, just because of the fact that he's actually written a book on alcoholism, which is kind of unique. And it's something that I've come to appreciate. So message here is very similar to Wives. It's going to be the same as we go along, but we're going to have some nuances here that I think are going to just enhance what it is to be a person around an alcoholic. And this is also good advice for a sponsor to be suggesting. It's one of the things that I think that a sponsor can do, is to say, get into these lost or unknown chapters, the ones that we're reading right now, because they have a wealth of knowledge and experience in them, and it really does make a difference. Rob?
Yeah, Leo, it makes a huge difference. The whole idea is Bill here is showing us how to deal with different people. It's a changing dynamics confronted with father's sudden sober life. father, wife, spouse. We are going to learn something about the newly sober husband's responsibilities, along with those of the other family members. The family afterwards, after the alcoholic has adopted its spiritual way of life. The whole idea is that we're changing. The alcoholic has changed. He's got a whole new outlook on life.
Yep.
Okay. And he's coming into the family, and the family going, who the heck is this guy? It's a change. So everybody's got to adapt to this change. Now, we know it's for the better, but the family's going, well, you know what? The kids, they were doing whatever the heck they wanted because father was too drunk to care. Now the father's going, hey, I want you home at such and such a time. So, hey, things are changing back, so we've all got it. There's a little bit of give and take everywhere. So we have to realize that. Also, I want to throw in that at the top here, it talks about a husband who is recovering. This is the only place other than a footnote on page 104 that recovering is used in this book. Just a little bit of information. So, and why? Is it not because each wants to play the lead? Is not each trying to arrange the family show to his liking? Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family rather than give?
Yeah, here we are. We're back to that, the person that's trying to control the play in the theater and wants to control all of the actors and the stage hands and the theater support people and stuff. Same thing holds true here. And it's just like Rob said, very, very well put, in that all of a sudden now there's an interest on the alcoholic's part in other people's lives. And that may be that there are certain things that they get involved in that they weren't involved before. And this, for the kids, for example, all of a sudden there might be limitations being put on them that wasn't there before for good reason. And so it's important to kind of take that and understand that there is a growing phase, if you will. There's a give and take, and there's especially the emphasis on giving as opposed to taking, and kind of becoming aware of that. We're just getting into that, and it's going to be a subtle thing. What I'm going to do is we'll stop there and we'll bring our good friend Bill into this. And then we'll get us a good start. This is kind of a nice finish because now we've kind of got an idea of where we're going next. Rob, I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey.
Hey, Bill.
Thanks a lot, guys. Good job today. Like you were saying, this is about giving some advice or suggestions to the other people that are involved with the alcoholic. Remember, this book is about helping the alcoholic to recover. So he's trying to give some advice to whoever it would be that's working with the alcoholic, whether it's a husband, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or whatever, who's ever dealing with the alcoholic. And basically what he's trying to say is, don't fight with the alcoholic about their drinking, because if you do, they're going to use that as an excuse to drink. I think Bill's using his own experience here that he went through with his wife, Lois. Every time they got into a fight and she told him he wasn't allowed to drink, I'm sure he just turned around and said, oh, yeah, watch this, and ran right out to the bar, And Bill understood that. When you fight with an alcoholic, the alcoholic gets a resentment, and resentment is the number one offender. That's what sends us back out. So he's basically saying, don't get resentments. Try to stay away from them. Try to avoid them, because if you do get a resentment, you're going to do something to the alcoholic. Now the alcoholic's going to do something back, and you're going to get him, and the resentment's going to snowball, and everything's just going to fall apart. And on the top of page 119, I like it says, when resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessings. That is Rob's pause again. He doesn't say it in here word for word, but when he's telling you to pause is in step 11. In other words, the suggestion he's giving here is use step 11 when you start getting resentful. And that can go for either one, for the spouse or the alcoholic. It makes no difference. You're supposed to use step 11. That's how you get through that stuff. If you have a problem with the resentment, a smart person knows how to fix a problem. A wise person knows how to avoid the problem. And he's telling us here how to avoid it. Before you get into the resentment, pause and look at it and ask for help. And this way, you got a good chance of it going away. Then he tells us the fact that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. That's really important. In other words, that's not information for the wives or the spouses. That's information for the alcoholic. That's AA's fix for everything. That's the treatment for alcoholism, is to work with somebody else, try to help somebody else. If you don't do that, you're going to develop untreated alcoholism. And that's not good, because you're going to wind up on a dry drunk or a wet drunk. And then in the same paragraph towards the end of it, it says, we suggest that you direct some of your thought to the wives of his new alcoholic friends. It makes no difference which side of the alcoholic thing you're on. If you're the spouse of the alcoholic, you try to help the spouses of other alcoholics. If you're the alcoholic, you try to help other alcoholics. That's AA's fix for everything. Try to help somebody that's going through stuff that you're going through, and that helps you get through it, and it makes you a better person. And that's basically what he's telling us here. And on the bottom of page 120, it talks about God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. And it says, better be found out right away. Then you and your husband can get right down to fundamentals. In other words, that means get to doing the work that's in this book. And then it says, place everything in God's hands. So we just don't rely on God to get us out of trouble. We have to do the work. We have to get down to the fundamentals. And then we have to ask God to help us get through it and do it correctly. And that's basically what he's telling us here. You know, I can't just rely on God to fix everything. I have to do my part. It's just like I have power in my home that turns the lights on. But I can't just sit here and watch the lights go on and off and on and off. I have to get up and hit the light switch. I have to do my part before the power kicks in. And we have to do our part before God's power is going to kick in. And then we went on to the family afterwards. And like Rob mentioned, up on the first paragraph, it says recovering. And then it says recovering in the footnote. That was on page, 104? That footnote on page 104 was not in the first edition or the second edition. That footnote went into the first printing of the third edition. That was in 1976, 5 years after Bill passed away. So that footnote didn't come from Bill. I don't know who it came from, but it didn't come from Bill. Bill normally used the word recovered. And he only used it once here in the family afterwards. He says recovering. And I think he means somebody that still wants to drink. They haven't been placed in a position of neutrality yet, safe and protected. So that they still have the alcoholic mind or the alcoholic brain. And he's just trying to give people some way of working with these people. In other words, don't fight with them. Don't argue with them. You don't have to let them do everything they want. But when you fight with an alcoholic, that's not a good thing. Because the way we get even with other people is we drink at them. That's what we do. I'll show you. What do you mean you don't want me drinking? I'll show you. Watch this. And Bill did that several times. He used to storm out of the house quite often, threatening, I'm going back out and drinking. I'll show you. I'm going to get drunk. Ha, ha, ha. Bill did that a couple times. One time he did that, and he went over to Hank Parkhurst's house instead, and Hank talked him down. So, so basically he's just trying to give some instruction or suggestions here on how to deal with an alcoholic. Because when we first get sober, we like Rob mentioned, we start to turn into a different person. And both sides have to adjust a little bit. That's pretty much all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Yep. Okay, let's go ahead and close out with the Serenity Prayer. And
Yeah, I'll just put a plug in the chat. Bill has his own meeting at 11 a.m. Eastern time every Friday. If you can make it there, you won't regret it. It's a great meeting.
It sure is.
The Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.